Good morning, friends and enemies. Today, we're diving back into your favorite series that keeps getting age restricted by YouTube. So if you like this video, you're going to have to go to my channel to find the other videos that I've made on this topic. But nonetheless, we're here to talk about the boys in Vegas and who they are projecting to be the single best picks in fantasy football drafts for 2025. These are strictly based on the numbers. These are not my projections. These are not the way that I'm looking at these players, but I'm going to give you a little bit of backing, a little bit of insight as to why I think they are projecting these specific players to be so high. As I will continue to tell y'all, I think Vegas is one of the best tiebreakers out there. They have very, very, very smart people that they pay a lot of money to make sure that these numbers are more accurate than your favorite fantasy analyst on Twitter. So we've got about 10 players to discuss today. Top of the list is the quarterback out there in Detroit, Jared Goff, currently going off the board as the quarterback 15. And we'll just put it this way, his passing touchdown totals are projected to be second, only behind Joe Burrow, and his passing yardage are behind only Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. And I understand that he is a cone in the pocket, and it's a little bit scary to draft a player that has literally negative rushing upside, but Jared Goff is the quarterback 15, and he has finished as the quarterback 7, the quarterback 7, and the quarterback 10 over the last 3 years. So while, sure, maybe I don't want to draft him around the quarterback 7, he is the perfect QB2 in a super flex league if he's going to drop to this part of the drafts. I get it. The biggest hole going into 2025 as it relates to Jared Goff's outlook is the loss of Ben Johnson. That one's going to hurt. They're not going to be as creative. I don't know how many open touchdowns they're going to have that Ben Johnson just poofed out of his mind into some scripture X's and O's on the table. But the infrastructure of what their offense is still one of the top 5 in the NFL when you look at the personnel. And yes, they lose Frank Ragnow, and I've seen the numbers, the EPA drops, but this was the same argument that the Philadelphia Eagles had last year when they lost Jason Kelce, and then they replaced him with Cam Jurgens. The Detroit Lions replaced Frank Ragnow with the second-round pick out of Georgia, Tate Ratledge. Obviously, he won't be Ragnow out the gate, but it's not like they didn't have a plan behind him. So the personnel, they still have a top 5 offensive line. They still have Amon-Ra St. Brown. They got J-Mo fresh off a breakout season last year. They still got Sam Laporta, one of the best young tight ends in the NFL, and they've got 2 thunder and lightning monsters in the backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. They're still playing in Detroit, as far as I'm concerned, meaning they're still going to play the majority of their games in a dome. So Jared Goff, right now, projections have him second in passing yards, third in passing touchdowns, but he is getting drafted as the quarterback 15. Quarterback number 2, staying within that division, the second-year-ish, rookie-ish JJ McCarthy out there in Minnesota. He is currently the quarterback 20 in fantasy drafts. His lines are projected to be 37.50 for passing yards, 24.5 for passing touchdowns. Those passing touchdown lines are tied for the 7th highest total in the NFL. That is the same total as Brock Purdy, as Jordan Love, as Bo Nix, as a lot of your favorite quarterbacks that aren't in the Joe Burrow Lamar tier. His passing yardage line is also tied for 7th highest in the NFL. And I get it, it's a lofty projection for a guy who hasn't played a real NFL snap yet. But when you compare him to other guys around his ADP, similar age and youthfulness and, you know, of what people are looking at with these quarterbacks going into the 2025 season, you know, the Bryce Youngs, the Michael Penixes, the Cam Wards, like his numbers, theirs out of the water. The obvious thing here is just being part of the Kevin O'Connell system and that offensive scheme, right? Like he elevates single quarterback statistically that plays there. He turned Sam Darnold into a damn all-pro quarterback last year. We've seen glimpses of what he can do with all these other subpar QBs under center. Now he's got his handpicked guy, top 10 pick, behind a very improved offensive line, signed Will Fries with his teammate Ryan Kelly, drafted Donovan Jackson in the first round. Christian Darrisaw will be back, him and Brian O'Neill at the tackle spots, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. Like, it's going to be hard for JJ to fail. And I'll also say on top of those passing yardage lines that are super lofty, he's also a very, very good athlete. So don't be surprised if he throws up 350 in the rushing department and maybe he gets lucky on the goal line and he scores 3, 4, 5 rushing touchdowns. The kid can scoot, and very much like Detroit, Minnesota, dome team. All right. So at the end of the year, when Green Bay and Chicago were playing outside in snow and tough weather, like he ain't. He's in a more casual type of league. JJ McCarthy is a perfect quarterback sleeper pick, especially if you're playing in 2 quarterback or super flex leagues. Like, he is someone that I'm heavily targeting as my QB2, or if he drops to the QB3 spot, like perfect depth on your team. And while we're on the topic of sleepers for your fantasy football draft, a reminder that our draft guide drops at the beginning of August. It's up on our site right now, available for a discounted pre-order price until August 1st on BDGE.co. However, the cheapest by far and away way to get it, just $10, is by going through our partner website and throwing down $10 there with code BDGE. Play any of these projections that I'm talking about today, passing yardage, passing touchdowns, whatever you feel good about, the things that I'm naming throughout this video. $10 when you sign up, code BDGE will get you our draft guide absolutely free. So no matter what league you're playing in, you will have rankings for it, positional rankings, super flex, half PPR, our must draft players, our top sleepers, our all fade list. You'll have write-ups for every single fantasy relevant player. It's all in there, all right? So we've got a pre-order discounted price on BDGE.co, but if you are in a state where our partner is available, that is by far and away the cheapest way to get access to the draft guide. Deposit $10, code BDGE, first link in the description down below. Third quarterback, we are going a little bit QB heavy here. We are sticking in the NFC, and that is West Coast, LA, the man who took Jared Goff's job out there. That is Matthew Stafford. Current ADP of quarterback 23. Projected lines 3750.5 passing yards, 23.5 for passing touchdowns. Similar numbers to JJ McCarthy, honestly, but he's actually 3 or 4 spots below him in ADP. I mean, again, just offensive system. This is one I just don't want to overthink. You got Sean McVay. You bring in Devontae Adams to replace Cooper Kupp. Last year, like, Stafford obviously had a down year statistically, but one, he's dealing with the elbow injury halfway through the season, which his numbers clearly dipped off after he suffered that injury. And 2, Puka and Cooper Kupp were injured basically the entire year. Like, of course, he's not going to have a good statistical season. One of the things I think that he has strongly in his favor this year is when they get down to the 10 and inside the 5-yard line, it's like, does the number of pass attempts down there tick more in favor of the passing offense when you have Devontae Adams there now? Like, Kyren Williams has basically led the NFL in goal carries in each of the last 2 seasons. It's like, if that starts to break a little bit in the passing side of things, Matthew Stafford could easily throw up 30 touchdowns. His passing yardage projection is higher than basically everyone in his vicinity. His passing touchdown line is also higher, tied with Tua there, but everybody else is far below him. Another guy who adds obviously no rushing upside, but they have a pretty good offensive line. I feel good about him staying upright, and another team that plays in a dome. So quarterback 23 as your quarterback 2 in a super flex league. Love Stafford. I know. Everyone's like, move away from the quarterbacks. We don't care about quarterbacks. Let's get into the skill positions. That's what we're here to do. And we will start with the wide receiver position, and that is DJ Moore. Currently going off the board as the wide receiver somewhere from 21 to 24, depending on what platform you are drafting on. And when I started writing the notes for this video, his projected receiving yards line was at 1050 and receiving touchdowns were at 6.5. 1050, well, again, on the surface doesn't sound that high, but as I've said in other videos, the way to look at these just from a raw, pure perspective is comparing them to other wide receivers. So not necessarily being like, I think he's going to have more than 1050 or less than 1050, but from a fantasy perspective, look at other receivers that are in that same vicinity when it comes to the yardage. 1050 is the same as Amon-Ra St. Brown. It is more than Ladd McConkey. It's the same as Drake London. Now, all that to say, his yardage did just drop a few days ago from 1050 down to 975.5. Prior to that move, he was sitting there with a yardage line that was legitimately, from a Vegas to fantasy perspective, the biggest gap between the two. But to keep that same energy, 975.5 is still higher than T. Higgins. It's the same as Devontae Adams. It's the same as Tyreek Hill. It's the same as Terry McLaurin. So to put that in perspective, and 6.5 touchdowns is a very good line as well. DJ Moore hasn't missed a single game since the 2020 season. He's also flirted with 100 catches in 3 of the last 4 seasons. And people don't like to label DJ Moore as like, oh, he's not a typical alpha, so like you can't put him in the range of like where those guys are going. He has led single receiving room that he has been in since he entered the NFL in 2018. Like, that is quite literally the definition of an alpha. The guy who goes in there and produces like the #1 guy in every single room. That's all he's done. And I get it, DJ Moore was completely underwhelming last year, but you finally have Shane Waldron out of the picture. The step up that Caleb Williams is going to take with an improved interior offensive line, signing Joe Thuney and Drew Dahlman and Jonah Jackson, and of course bringing in Ben Johnson, like, it can't be emphasized the night and day difference that we're going to see in the Chicago passing offense once they start clicking. Rome Odunze likely going to take a step up, but Keenan Allen's gone, 120 targets. Colston Loveland will step up as well, 10th overall pick. Luther Burden, top 40 pick. But DJ led this team in targets, and I know there's all these reports like DJ Moore, his body language. Like, if you want to fade one of the guys who's led everything he's been on because, like, there was one report about body language taken out of context. We actually watched the full clip from Ben Johnson. I'm negative worried about that. Do that. I think DJ Moore is going to fall in a lot of leagues because anyone who took him last year was really disappointed, but anyone who took any Chicago player last year was wildly disappointed. If you completely fade Chicago this year because of what happened last year, that's how you lose fantasy football. Like, it's not the same situation, not even close. So DJ Moore, to me, is one of the more undervalued players, and they are telling you that by the projections this year. Next up, we've got another veteran wide receiver here out in Tennessee, the clear alpha, Calvin Ridley. Current ADP is wide receiver 36. When you look at his projections in Vegas, his receiving yardage outside of Jerry Jeudy, his receiving yardage line is higher than the next 13 higher ranked in ADP wide receivers. He's tied with Jeudy, but he's tied or higher than the 13 players ranked above him. I don't have all 13 above him, but I promise you they are. And his touchdown line at 5.5 is the same or higher than 10 of the 13 guys above him. I've talked a lot about Calvin Ridley already this offseason. He is a back-to-back 1,000-yard receiver that's getting fantasy community because he disappointed relative to where his ADP has been. But now he's getting drafted at wide receiver 36 with what's likely to be a major quarterback upgrade. Going from Will Levis and Mason Rudolph to the #1 overall pick in the draft in Cam Ward, a guy who loves to take deep shots, which pairs so well with Calvin Ridley, is something you can sell to me 8 out of 7 days a week. Again, I acknowledge that he is disappointed in ADP because we've had to draft him early the last 2 years, and I'm not projecting like a top 12 or even top 15 finish, but he has finished over the last 2 years as the wide receiver 17 and 18 in targets and the wide receiver 24 and 18 in receiving yards. You have to leave room for the fact that Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans will overachieve because we've seen that multiple times over the last half decade. That rookie quarterbacks, we don't know how to project them. We don't know how to evaluate them. And then they have great rookie years and their top receiver explodes because of it. A lot of times these veteran wide receivers who have breakout fantasy seasons, think Cortland Sutton with Bo Nix coming in, think Terry McLaurin with Jaden Daniels coming in, think Nico, a lot of these veteran wide receivers who have an injection of a new quarterback experience major upside because the quarterback breaks out and they're the biggest beneficiary of it. And in Tennessee, I mean, there's no real target competition there. They bring in Tyler Lockett, who's like 40 years old. You have like Van Jefferson and then a bunch of 3 picks that they took in the NFL draft. There's no serious target competition there. So Ridley's yardage is projected to be higher than all your favorite rookie wide receivers, higher than George Pickens, higher than Jalen Waddle, way higher than Chris Godwin, Rome Odunze, Chris Olave, Jordan Addison, Juwan Jennings, like the list goes on and on and on. Calvin Ridley literally led the NFL in unrealized air yards last year, meaning they took shot after shot after shot that did not come to fruition because their quarterbacks were so inaccurate. On the opposite side, Cam Ward led the NCAA in deep passing last year, okay? It is, on paper, it's a match made in heaven. And these lines are made to capitalize on people's recency bias and swinging too far on the other side of the pendulum. So you finally get to draft Ridley at his wide receiver 3-4 price, but you're going to get top 25, top 20 yardage and target numbers most likely. And I think just going off that, when we look at that chart, you could see Jerry Jeudy's pretty green as well. Now, his touchdown totals are down in the 3.5, and I think that's more of a projection of the overall offensive upside. Like being in Cleveland, their win total as a team is like 4.5. We don't know who's going to start at quarterback. It's a mess out. So a lot of the times, someone's touchdown totals are a direct representation of the offensive environment and system that they're in, which is what you see. But Jeudy at 925, Calvin Ridley at 925. You know who else has 925 as their receiving yardage projection? Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith-Njigba. So just keep that stuff in mind. I almost think that's another positive for Calvin Ridley. The fact that he's in a offensive situation that's considered one of the worst in the league, but he has a touchdown total much higher than the Chris Olaves and the Jerry Judys who share that same sentiment. If you're enjoying this type of video, like I said in the beginning, I've done multiple of these. Unfortunately, YouTube has kind of like done that to him because of the type of content it is. It's still up there. You just have to go to my channel and actually like find it. It's not pushing it organically anymore. As you can see, I've been a little bit smarter with my verbiage. I'm going to be making a ton of videos like this going forward as more projections are released throughout the summer, like when different types of lines are released. What are the chances this guy goes over 1,000 yards as deeper prospects get released as well? Like there aren't a ton of projections on guys that are ranked like wide receiver 60, wide receiver 70, where we get like deep into the sleepers. But as those get get released throughout the summer, I will make more of these videos. So if you do enjoy, subscribe to the channel so that you can get those videos in your face. Let's move to the running back position. One of my favorite boring picks this year is James Conner out there in Arizona, currently the RB20. James Conner sitting there with a projection of 900.5, which isn't, you know, far and above everybody else on this list, but it's the same as Breece Hall. It's higher than Kenneth Walker. It's higher than Joe Mixon. And his touchdown total of 7.5 feels really good. It's the third highest total on this list. Dave Montgomery's at 10.5. Joe Mixon is at 8.5. And you could see a theme there. Those guys are tied to very good offenses. Dave Montgomery's actually really interesting. They still have him at 10.5, but his yardage is all the way down at 725, which is the lowest it's been in quite a few years, which kind of tells you the type of player that they're expecting him to be in 2025, which shouldn't be a surprise. He obviously gets a big boost in standard leagues because he'll be a goal line weapon there, but PPR leagues, we're probably starting to move away from the Dave Montgomery archetype. I think you can make the same argument for Chuba right next to him that I'm making with James Conner right now. Two veterans that are probably the RB1s on their team. Chuba, I would say I'm more cautious to draft him. One, because he's more expensive than James Conner is in drafts. Two, he actually got running back competition in his backfield where nothing changed in Arizona in terms of depth. It's the same exact group. From last year going into this year, they gave him a contract extension telling him that they still imagine him being the lead back. They did with Chuba too, but they brought in Rico Dowdle, who's fresh off of a 1,200-yard season, and they drafted Trevor Etienne in the 4th round. I also have a lot more confidence in the overall team success for Arizona than I do with Chuba Hubbard and Carolina. So I'm like, if I'm gonna use a tiebreaker to pick a running back in fantasy, it's always attaching to teams that I have more confidence in. So Conner, yeah, like say what you want about Trey Benson. Also, if you want to take Trey Benson, his ADP is like 140 overall, handcuff him. But James Conner, to me, everything that they did last year and everything that they said this offseason points to James Conner still being the workhorse there. He's been one of the most underrated backs of legit like our generation at this point. So big fan of James Conner. Now, if we move that list down just a little bit, we keep James Conner up there, move past all the rookies. We've got a slab of green down there with Kaleb Johnson, who I've talked about kind of ad nauseum, DeAndre Swift, and Tony Pollard. You have Kaleb Johnson's projections are the second highest among all rookies this year behind just Ashton Genty. And that is just a pure rushing number. Obviously, like they don't have receiving yardage and receptions up for running backs yet, which I said, obviously subscribe to the channel. As those numbers to flood out, I will start to update these videos and make new versions of them, which give us a lot more context to it. This just speaks to the fact that they are very much projecting Kaleb Johnson to have a very big role out of the gate in this backfield. It's Arthur Smith, who's going to be a top 5 rushing offense. They are always top 5 in just pure rushing volume, and that is what Kaleb Johnson's role is. This man turned Tyler Algier, and by this man I mean Arthur Smith, as much shit as he gets. He turned Tyler Algier, a 5th-round rookie, into a 1,000-yard rusher. Cordarrelle Patterson had 1,000 yards from scrimmage. The Steelers' run-blocking unit per PFF was 9th last year. I'm just a big fan of Kaleb Johnson. I think he's going to take a massive rushing role in this offense, something similar to Najee out the gate, where I can imagine him getting 225, 250 carries. And at that range, like all you have to do is average 4 yards a carry, and you're going to be close to 1,000 yards on the ground. He'll probably goal line back as well. Aaron Rodgers coming in, I think, gives the offense a little bit more stability. I'm not over the moon about this offensive system, which is why I'm like kind of tempering expectations overall. But he should be the guy that they run their offense through. But with those guys right underneath, you have DeAndre Swift at 850, you have Tony Pollard at 875. And I get it, like the rookies are the more upside, high explosive, like second half of the year league winner types. But I do think there's something to be said with stacking the bottom of your roster, stacking your flex spots with guys that we know have solidified roles. Like DeAndre Swift, they brought nothing in, man. Roshan Johnson, he ain't it. Kyle Monaguy's a fun little, name to throw out there. 7th rounder out of Rutgers, and he's getting some praise this offseason. But again, he's a 7th rounder. Swift has some experience with their new head coach, Ben Johnson, from their days back in Detroit. Swift was a heavy pass catcher of the football in Detroit under Ben Johnson. So I think there's a little bit of chemistry there already, and a much improved offensive line should give him a higher floor. And then Tony Pollard, he's been like the Calvin Ridley of the running backs here. 1,000 yards back-to-back seasons. Should be the starter there, earned it there. If Cam Ward is better than we're giving him credit for, if he comes in and turns this offense around, Tony Pollard is obviously going to be a very, very big beneficiary of that. But let us move in to the last few players, and that is the last position, the tight ends. The name that jumps out to me here is David Njoku. All right, his projection is up at 700.5, receiving touchdowns at 5.5. 700.5 first is higher than every tight end getting drafted underneath him. That mark is higher than Mark Andrews. It is higher than Kelsey. It's higher than Laporta. And it's the same as TJ Hawkinson. All of those guys getting drafted far above him. The touchdown total is surprisingly high for the system that he's going to be in as well. I think if we get Joe Flacco as their quarterback, which is far from a guarantee, and this is a little bit of a projection, obviously, like I wouldn't be surprised if Kenny Pickett was their starter. I wouldn't be surprised if 6 weeks in we had one of the getting under center. But if we get a Joe Flacco 2-3 months, 10 games, 12 games, njoku is going to be a monster this year in fantasy. He's been great the last few years consecutively, but if you look at the splits with Joe Flacco under center over the last 2 years, David Njoku, 18.6 PPR fantasy points per game. That number there, you see in split on the left, at a split on the right. Like the number to the left on the in split is per game numbers. The number to the right is paced over 17 games. This 17-game pace is over 100 catches, 14 touchdowns, 150 targets, 1,300 receiving yards. Obviously, I don't expect that, but I still think it's notable. David Njoku is one of my favorite tight ends to draft. If you miss out on like the Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle tier, I'm not so inclined to go jump up for a Hawkinson, to jump up for a Laporta, especially not a Kelsey or an Andrews. Like Njoku feels like the right spot to me where you could wait an extra 2 to 3 rounds and get him as your. I've also come around to the final player on this list. And again, if you've enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button. I look at the thumbs up numbers. The number that indicates which videos you guys like the most are the ones that I assume have the most thumbs up. Okay, so go do that if you enjoy this video. That is the rookie Colston Loveland, number 10 overall pick to the Chicago Bears, tight end 13 right now in ADP. But his yardage projection at 675.5 is pretty damn green when you look at the players around him. It is actually the most green, and they don't have touchdown projections up for the guys around him really yet, but his is high, and I would project those other guys to be around the same, if not like lower, honestly. But you look at the other guy, Tyler Warren, the rookie that was drafted 4 spots after him, goes to Indy. Yardage projection is a serious bump down from Loveland. Realistically, I'm a little weary of this line, but again, if I'm sticking to the premise of this video where it's like you got a lot of really smart guys that are hired to make these numbers, they probably know something, all right? You go into the Ben Johnson offense. You obviously look at what Laporta did his rookie year under Ben Johnson. I think Loveland's going into a situation where he's got really serious target competition, obviously, and Cole Kmet being there. Cole Kmet's not going to be an impact player in fantasy, but he will still play on probably like 50% of the snaps, which does make the receiving yardage line a little bit murky for me. But again, like 675.5, that's the same number as Travis Kelce. That is basically the same number as Laporta. It's above a lot of the guys that are ranked above him in ADP. The majority of guys, actually, when you look at the numbers. These projections for Loveland have actually really made me look twice at Colston Loveland for redraft this year in particular. I love Warren for Dynasty. I like Loveland for Dynasty as well, but I preferred Warren as a player, just as a pure prospect. But like they are projecting Loveland to have a pretty impactful year out of the gate. So let that change your mind a little bit, hopefully. Okay, so these were 10 or more players that are clear values in drafts based on where Vegas is projecting these players to land statistically. And if you never want to have to watch another 35-minute video, go get the draft guide. That is where all of our best work is basically just combined into one beautifully, neatly organized product for you. It's the only thing that you will need on your draft day to make sure you don't fuck up your drafts, all right? Again, it is available for a discounted pre-order price until August 1st on BDGE.co, but the cheapest way, by far and away the cheapest way to get it, is through our partner website. Deposit, play with promo code BDGE. As soon as you play for the first time, you will get an in-app message with the promo code to use to get the draft guide for free. All right, I'm out of here. I love you. Smoochies.